Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And our guest for another one of our sessions is none other than Dr. Alan Singer, longtime supporter and guest on Media Watch. Dr. Singer, self-ID with some of your background.
Well, first, thanks, Bob and Eric, for having me. I'm a professor of education and of history at Hofstra University. I'm a former New York City high school teacher, and I've written extensively on the history of slavery and racism in New York State, New York City.
And so as a result of that background, you're always tying that history to current events and civics. And I think you started some kind of a curriculum that you've been telling folks they need to do about teaching civics tied to the current activism. Give us a little on that.
Well, first, let me just say, I don't teach Black history. I teach American history, but the point is that race and racism are at the center of American history. Know what Donald Trump might decide to tweet tonight.
Yes, we'll talk about that 1619 project down the road. Go.
Well, I have a new book coming out with Routledge with a colleague, Pablo Muriel. And one of the things we've talked about is how teachers can support and encourage student activism. Because when you look at the New York State and also New Jersey, most state social studies curriculum, the measure of civic understanding is whether you act on your beliefs. So that students are supposed to then decide to become civic activists, and teachers are supposed to encourage it. And so a lot of what I've tried to do is to support student activism primarily in high schools.
Fantastic. And as part of that activism yourself, you do a number of submissions to various blogs and publications, don't you?
Yes, well, I write for the History News Network, and I write for Daily Kos. One funny thing came up. I did a piece, it wasn't funny, for the History News Network on citizens' arrest in Georgia. And I explained how it dated back to the Civil War, because the slave catchers from Georgia were all involved in fighting up in Virginia. So basically, they empowered any white person to arrest any Black person. And that was the origin of Georgia's citizens arrest law, and it's still in the books. That got picked up by The Daily Show, and I actually got to do a bit with Roy Wood Jr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was very funny.
You should have plugged that so we could put it out on our listserv. But so let's circle back to one of the pieces you just recently wrote, right? Because it deals with the current arrests pertaining to, Bob, what was it? The Rochester Police Department pretty much retired en masse. We're taping the Wednesday before our Monday air, and they basically resigned the Tuesday before our Wednesday taping date.
Exactly. The police chief up there decided to resign, and he's all of 40 years old, but he decided to is it resign or retire? I think he might have actually had enough.
Retire. Yeah.
He actually had enough seniority to retire at that age, so that's what he did. And a number of the other leaders in the Rochester Police Department decided to either retire or go down to a lower post, sort of out of command, and thus ducking further scrutiny. At least they think. At least that's what
they basically cleaned house voluntarily of their own accord, because the mayor came out and said she did not ask for any resignations per se while the investigation was ongoing.
No, Mayor Lovely Warren, exactly. She said exactly that. She did not request anybody's resignation or dismissal or demotion. They just came out and did it today, as you said, the Wednesday before we air on Monday.
Yeah. So Alan, you basically had to come to the defense of a teacher who had gotten himself embroiled. Tell us a little bit about what he did, what the outcome was, and what your piece was about pertaining to that Rochester situation.
First, a Black man named Daniel Prude died in police custody. A lot of Black men have died in police custody. Mm-hmm. Now, he was having from the video, he was having a psychotic break. And 7 police officers, I believe it was 7, were suspended for the way they essentially mistreated him while the investigation. Meaning there was no reason for him to die. There have been mass demonstrations in Rochester against police behavior. And what happened this weekend is a science teacher who's also assistant principal at one of the local school districts, and a white man, I think he was in his 40s, was participating in the protests. They were on a bridge, and apparently police opened fire with tear gas, other projectiles, and they fled. He then did a selfie video, which he posted on Facebook, denouncing the police attack on peaceful demonstrators. He said all we were doing was chanting and singing. What happened was it was laced with curses.
Okay.
And so you got, he was furious, and probably not the wisest thing to do is to post on Facebook while you're furious.
Right.
At any rate, there were people calling they should be suspended, he should be fired. And the district said they were investigating.
Well, it was a school district that he worked for. So
Yes.
tell us which school district, if you got it.
Spencerport. It's the Spencerport School District where he was employed. But in the video, he never identified that he was a teacher or administrator at the Spencerport School District. He spoke about his affiliation with the National Association for Multicultural Education. But he never said I'm a teacher, he never said I'm a school employee, he never said I'm an administrator. And my understanding of the courts is that if you are acting in your capacity, professional capacity, and you do things that the school board doesn't support, they can fire you.
Especially if you identify yourself as being on that school board and speaking on their behalf.
Right. But not only did he never claimed he was speaking on their behalf, he never identified himself as affiliated with them.
Right.
Therefore, he was speaking as a citizen. Whether you agree with the things he said or not, he had a right to say them. And that's what the courts have consistently ruled.
Okay. So the disciplinary moves that they want to take against him, your contention is that's illegal. And if he has the right counsel, he can make sure that that's abrogated and he should not have a problem.
Well, not only that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There are competing petitions on change.org. And the one calling for him to be retained, as of Sunday night, had 4,000 signatures. The one calling on him to be fired had 200. So apparently in Rochester, there's a lot of support for this man's action, but also for Black Lives Matter.
Now Spencerport is it a near the school district? Is it a near suburb of Rochester? Just for the sake of the viewers,
I believe so. Rochester area, what you have is the core school district is 100% minority, and then it's circled by suburban school districts that are overwhelmingly white.
That sounds like Milwaukee, which is the Milwaukee school district is mainly minority, and then you get immediately to the suburbs within Milwaukee County, and they're pretty much white. But go ahead.
That's Rochester.
Okay. And
if you, instead of having an inner core and an outer core, if you cut it like this way, you could have interracial school districts. It's gerrymandered to keep them segregated.
Yeah, that's basically what's been going on since Brown versus Board of Ed passed. So that's why school districts and schools are even more racially segregated in the 21st century than they were in the 20th century.
But even in and of course Spencerport being a public school district, it's as you said, as long as he didn't identify himself as a school teacher or said it in class or something, or played the Facebook posting in class, he's a citizen. And as you said, the courts have backed that up. But I've seen so many cases, even back when I was a reporter. We had the company, the corporation, tried to get the newsroom to sign a code of ethics where we agreed not to participate in local politics In other words, we couldn't go to a common council meeting as a citizen and speak up. So we as reporters didn't sign it. So even with a journalistic corporation, they didn't quite get that. You're a
Yeah.
citizen no matter what.
It sounds like a Trump non-disclosure agreement in one of his prenups.
Yes.
But we have to be vigilant about maintaining our own individual First Amendment rights and the ability to continue to act as not just citizens, citizens of color, citizens of any persuasion, race, creed, religion, or whatever, just citizens able to live their lives fully as citizens and participate in this attempted democracy. Notice I keep saying attempted democracy, Alan, because we know it's a republic. We know there's an oligarchic system that's been buttressed by things like the Electoral College. And so I challenge anyone to tell me that we actually are living in a democracy.
The current non-elected president lost by 3 million votes. I'm terrified what's going to happen in November.
So am I, Alan.
Yeah.
So am I, because I look at the poll numbers and things like what happened today will make the three of us shudder, but it won't move the needle. His supporters will just sit there and support him despite this incredible, downward spiral that we see every day in this administration.
So you mentioned what happened today. So we're going to have to back up and bring our viewers and listeners up to speed on where we are and what we're trying to do to talk about. Part of the stories we want to, at least the issues we want to cover, is how these activisms, these demonstrations in the streets of Portland, Rochester, even in New York, where some SUV just drove through some people 2 days ago, right here in the city of New York. And no arrests were made as of 2 days ago. I don't know what the upshot of that's going to be. But those demonstrations that sometimes turn violent in the latter stages, which is triggering the law and order card that your guy in the White House is playing full bore like Richard Nixon did back in late 60s, 68, whatever. Those demonstrations and the law and order card and the COVID-19 issues are basically what's going to drive this upcoming election. So where do we stand, Alan, on where your take is on what, let's say, since you're an educator and you're in a school district, they're polarizing the search for a vaccine, they're polarizing the need to go back to schools. What have you seen about the colleges and the high schools and middle schools in this push to have in-person classrooms that Trump and the Republicans have been pushing, and that the teachers union and a bunch of parents are saying, much as I want my kids out of the house, I want my kids safe. Where is that issue standing right now?
That's a hard one because it's very uneven playing field.
Mm-hmm.
There are colleges that opened and closed a week later all
Bingo.
across the country.
Right?
Hofstra has remained open. Hofstra has lots of things in place and checks, and sign-ins. All our classes are hybrid. Students can Zoom in. Students can attend in person.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger issue is what happens in communities, and we don't know. Some of the Long Island schools are open face-to-face. Some of the Long Island schools are completely online. Most of the Long Island schools are on a hybrid model where some of the kids come on Monday, Wednesday, and Zoom Tuesday, Thursday. Other kids come Tuesday, Thursday, and Zoom Monday, Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So people are experimenting with ways. For the youngest children, it's very, very hard. I mean, I have 4 grandchildren ranging from 8 to 16. You know, the 16-year-olds would like to go to school, but they're capable of doing the work on their own. Mm-hmm. A 12-year-old has also been very effective, but the 8-year-old seems to be lost. You know, mm-hmm. And he needs to get to school, be with kids. So very hard. And the 2 older ones are mine. The 2 younger ones are my partner's grandchildren.
Right.
So it's very, very difficult.
So Bob, what have you seen vis-a-vis the hybrid models, and the political fighting that's been going on, say, in New York? Because I saw a story where one of the Long Island school districts went on this hybrid model that you were talking about, Alan, where they staggered the school day or broke down the different levels, and some kids were going to be in school on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other school kids were going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and then they staggered them mornings and then afternoon. And one kid and his parents decided, well, my kid's going to go to school every day. So despite the fact that the school said you have a staggered schedule, you come here and then you do your distance learning on this start, and then you come this day, he just said, I'm here. I'm going to go to school because I want to go to school. And the reporter interviewed his parents and said, the kid has to be in school. He needs to be in school 5 days a week. And I'm saying to myself, but what about the other parents and the other kids who decide to follow the rules and deal with the staggered start and do that? What gives you the right to say, I do what I feel like doing? And I find that this seems to be a problem in a lot of upscale suburban areas about people feeling that it's my life, my kid, I can do what I want to do. What have you seen, Bob? You seen similar things elsewhere, or?
I mean, I've seen the similar challenges. Of course, I'm watching more on the college level than so much on the K to 12. But like in Florida, Volusia County, I believe that St. Augustine is in that area, either in it or near it. They had kids coming back for the first day of school, and the halls were packed. I mean, there was impossible social distancing, and yeah, you had the parents who said, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm kids staying home." And then you had the other parents that said, "Oh, I'm glad it's open. We can do this." I mean, I see the crowding, but somehow we'll get it done. But on the university side, like for example, Columbia, they're online. They're not even. It's an urban campus. They're not dealing with any kind of congestion, so they're online. But the University of UNC, they opened, and now they're sending folks home. And I believe the same thing is happening at the University of Richmond. And of course, you have the freelancers, the parents that don't want to listen to the rules and screwing everything up. So it's a mess. And because we don't have that central point of information from Washington, D.C., giving us at least a compass point, everyone's doing it on their own and reinventing the wheel.
Bob, you were talking about the Woodward book and the new revelations. Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Eric, I mean, in Bob Woodward's new book, which is, what's the name of it? Rage?
Rage.
And Bob Woodward, dating back to Nixon and Watergate, and in on the record interviews, he has Trump basically saying that he didn't want to panic the nation with this COVID thing, however he put it back then. And it's clear that he wanted to tamp it down because he didn't want to get us excited, is what he said. And of course, that's in my opinion, as irresponsible as it gets.
One of the timelines that one of the reporters, actually in reporting the story out last Wednesday, was doing a chronological timeline on the interviews that Woodward was doing with Trump. And I believe he was saying on February 7th. And some of the stations are playing the actual audio tape.
Right, this is a tape.
Yes. Woodward tapes everybody. People forget that Bob Woodward doesn't write books from memory. He takes a tape recorder from the early days and he just records everything, and then he just goes back home and transcribes stuff. So the audio tapes are there. And so the reporters are playing excerpts from these interviews, and you hear Trump saying to Woodward, it's on like February 7th, Bob, this is one of the biggest things we're going to have that we have to deal with. This is kind of serious, and it's airborne, and it's something hard to deal with. I'm paraphrasing, but this is close to it. And the bottom line is, This is worse than even the stubbornest flu that you've ever seen in the past, something to that effect. That's on February 7th. Around February 27th, he's on the podium, one of his news conferences, and he's saying, oh, it'll be gone, and it's like, maybe like the flu, maybe not as bad as the flu, something to that effect. And so they contrast what he's saying to Woodward about the fact that this stuff is some serious stuff. And then he goes out and tells the American people, no, don't worry about it. It's not that bad. We don't have that much to worry about. And there are many instances of tapes where he says bad stuff, really tough, don't know what we're going to do. And then he goes out and plays it down. And now they were defending it. What's her name? McElhaney, whatever his supposed press. She's saying the president doesn't lie. He tries to make sure he does not panic the American people. And so that was all about not panicking the American people. And basically he's saying the same thing. Yeah, I lied to you, but I was trying to keep you calm. So,
well, like FDR, a day will live in infamy, and George W., 9/11, and Trump seized the range of leadership and denied what he knew.
yeah.
Yes, and that's the entire point. That's I mean, that's what's so, you know, God bless Bob Woodward for being the journalist that he is, with the evidence in hand, with the tapes. So you cannot argue that, well, the world didn't know. He did know. Yeah. And like you said, 3 weeks later, he's telling us not to worry about it. So.
And 200,000 Americans are dead.
Well, this is, I think Biden's response to hearing about this, I'm saying last Wednesday, it's today when we're talking. Biden says, all the reports are that this man had just given us the straight facts and told us how serious this was publicly. 36,000 people might not have died. And my guess is a hell of a lot more people might not have died, not just 36,000, had they taken this seriously from day one. So the interesting thing is this guy has now been caught out on stuff by revelations from 2 books that have come out this week that we're taping. And the other big revelation was not a book, but the Atlantic magazine's article, which goes to the fact of how much and how often this, quote, president, and I say quote because he's not my president because I think it was an illegal election anyway, but how much this guy lies. And that's the fact that he was calling those military people who served in both World War I and World War II and any war that they've been in, losers and suckers. And why should he visit Below Woods in France? Because the weather's bad and his fake hair might get mussed up. So the question was, you know, what can we believe by this guy? And what's it going to do to the upcoming election? His fans are never going to leave him. What do you think might happen with the swing voters with these last 2 revelations?
Well, Alan, yeah, I'd like to hear your view on it, because I'm afraid that no matter what this idiot does, it's just not going to push the needle anywhere. No matter what insanity between now and then, it's just not going to move. But I wanted to hear your opinion, Alan.
I'm worried. There are clearly, from the polls from the election in 2016, there's some people who are just not swayed by what he does. Either it's because of religious mysticism and God does things in strange ways, and they sent this Donald Trump, which some of the evangelicals have said, or it's because of racism and ethnocentrism. It's the fear is not just Donald Trump, but the fear is all those people who will support him, whatever he does. And I find that very, very scary. I find scary that the leadership of the Republican Party accepts this. I mean, there are people in the Republican Party who are veterans. I'm waiting for Jim Kelly to say, to speak up and say, I can't remain silent anymore, because he insulted everything that I believe in. You know, it's too much. But you have Black people they parade at the Republican National Convention, who will side with him because they see it for their advantage. Just too many people are sticking with him because they see it to their advantage. I mean, his whole campaign is based on scaring white people that black people are going to want to move into your neighborhood.
Yes, and we have about 2.5 minutes left, Eric.
So I'm very worried.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just saying we have about
I got
2.5
it.
minutes left, but go ahead.
Alan, the scary part is, even if somebody, another book that just excerpts coming out of is his former fixer, so-called friend and personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. He has a new book out that's coming out, and he's talking about all the racist things that he'd heard this so-called president say, and that, yeah, it happened in his presence. He's talking about all the different nefarious things that he's done, that he's been talking to some of the U.S. attorneys about, and some of the U.S. attorneys saying, well, his stuff is good, but it's not as good as he's claiming it is. But yeah, he's useful. That's the play on Cohen's book. But between Cohen's book, between the Atlantic article, between Bob Woodward's book, and this new thing about Melania and me, the lady who was Melania's right-hand lady, and all the stuff that went on with the dollars and the shenanigans of the inaugural money, that she's talking to 3 different U.S. attorneys about the investigations, about all that corruption and that what happened to that money. This man and his people, how many? 7 of his people have been indicted? 7, maybe 5 to 7. How many of them went to jail? How many of them are in jail waiting for pardons?
And we have 45 seconds.
It is just unconscionable to me that not enough people can understand that this is a man who's unfit for the presidency, whose 3.5 years has proven nothing but corruption. He was impeached, but as you said, Alan, the Senate is so gutless, they wouldn't convict him even though the evidence was there. What's the country going to do?
20 seconds, Eric.
Just call it up. I mean, look, Alan, thanks for being with us, folks. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Please follow us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
Again, thank you very much for having me.
That was Alan Singer signing off, folks. Thank you very much. We'll catch you the next time.